I know a lot of online fitness people, and I know a lot of people that build or are in the process of building companies. Something I do in addition to running this podcast and my company at Rebuild Recovers. I'm actually a coach inside of a online fitness mastermind. But when I kind of started digging into what you're doing, like wildly impressed with what you've built over there at Fit Father Project, and I know it's got a lot to do with some of the reasons behind why you got started. So I think that's really where I want to start with you today, is kind of that story of what was really the catalyst for you to begin to take health pretty seriously, and then kind of your journey into the fitness world. And I think in packing your journey a little bit, obviously today we'll have tons of value for the audience, and kind of let your story kind of guide our conversation today. But yeah, as we kick it off here, why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about what was that triggered moment, or what's the story behind why you became so passionate about health and fitness, and specifically helping dads or father type figures?
Yeah. I'd like to take it back and maybe share this experience in a way that I haven't before. If I can think back to some of my youngest memories, I always loved being physically active. Like, I was the type of kid that loved playing sports, loved moving my body. I was born in New York and I grew up in Toronto, Canada, probably before I was 10 in those places. So hockey was a big deal. Skating was a big deal. I wanted to be the fastest kid, and I never was, which was a good thing. But it just really gave me this fire for pushing myself. And at the same time, my dad got very sick as I was growing up. He got a cancer diagnosis, and I watched him battle this thing for pretty much a good portion of my childhood. Multiple brain surgeries, chemotherapy, and he eventually died at 42 years young. And I was just 9 at the time. And I had a unique experience to get to see what it was like to have the guy you look up to most in your life at that age, your dad, see him lose his physical capacity and see how it affected every area of his life. And also see his strength through the process, right? There's so many lenses and perspectives to look at that. And when, basically my dad knew he was on his way out. He was probably like 41 at this time, in-home hospice. He moved us down to Phoenix and Scottsdale, Arizona area where I live now. He basically wanted to have a place for my mom, my little brother, and I to be when he passed, to start a new life. And the actual night he died, we just moved to Arizona. It was in June, and I went down to the basketball court, was playing with some kids, and I kind of got into a fight because I think I had a lot of emotion and anger at this time, knowing my dad was so close to death. Got into a fight, got pushed, and I ended up snapping my arm. Arm's broken. I walk home the mile or whatever it was to the little basketball court, and open the door. My mom I don't even know what she was thinking at this point. Her husband's dying in the other room. Son comes home with broken arm. Who knows where my little brother was? Take me to the hospital. I have overnight surgery, and while I was in the hospital, that was the night my dad died. And so this cascade of events that happened early in my life, without me knowing it consciously, rewired my psychology about the understanding of our bodies, gave me an early sense of mortality, and also lit a fire inside of me to become strong and to do everything I could to have a body that in my young mind was, wouldn't get cancer. So I could be strong to be there for my mom, my little brother now. So it flipped some switches in my brain. And it's not to say that it was all just fire from that moment. Those months after dad died were some of the darkest in our family. But it set me on a unique course where at 10, my 10th birthday, I started, looking at stuff that I could do. At first, it was late at night. I'd go take runs outside, and I found that the harder I ran until my lungs were just absolutely burning and screaming, it was hard to be sad. And I started to feel better, and I was just activating my body's own internal pharmacy of all these good neurotransmitters and chemicals without knowing it at the time. But I knew if I ran more, I felt better. My mom also gifted me a pair of my dad's old dumbbells, these little sand weights, and I used to start to train. I had no idea what I was doing, but I keep the weights underneath the bed. I had a little Walkman with some music that I loved. At the time, the emotion that fit me was, like God Smacks I Stand Alone or something like hard like that, was really tapping into some fire I had to drive and develop. And I would do push-ups and curls and squats. And I found out that when I went back to school, I was stronger and faster than the other kids. So I was like, there's something here. And I started to heal some more through the medium of this body. And I continue into athletics in high school. And this is kind of where I started to develop my passion for bodybuilding. You know, as I started to lift more weights and I started to get my first pump, I remember the first time I got like a real legitimate arm pump. I must have been, I don't know, maybe 10, 11 years old. I ran into my mom. I'm like, Mom, something's happening right now. My forearm is like, what's wrong? But it felt so good and I felt so alive, and I saw my body change. And in middle school, like I'd flex for some of the girls, and I had a little egg in my little bicep, and that made me feel great. And I ended up having a gift, and that was I went to an all boys high school, Catholic high school, very big on sports, not a lot of girls. So the things you did is you tried to get as big as possible. So I started packing my water and making my food in the morning. And I was not a big guy, but I gained over 100 pounds in high school through focusing on training and all these things. And I became someone that my friends started asking me, like, dude, how do I get stronger and bigger? And I wrestled throughout high school, and I found that I enjoyed the training and the lifting side of it more than anything. So I ended up going to college, and my criteria for college, when I was very explicit with my parents, was like, I want this college to have an awesome gym, because I loved the gym so much, and it was such a huge part of my life. So I ended up going to University of Pennsylvania because they had a bodybuilding show. They had this Mr. Penn bodybuilding show, and I told my mom, I want to go here because this is a great school and I want to win this bodybuilding show. And so we applied, I got in, and I ended up competing and winning that bodybuilding show over the course of years. But this was now my foray into taking some of this knowledge that started with the seeds of watching my dad and all the self-learning and experimentation through high school in the lens of fitness into this realm of competitive bodybuilding. And I ended up competing for the next 10 years. Doing all sorts of different shows, did some fun stuff for bodybuilding.com. And I went deep into this, and I ended up winning a junior show in an organization called Muscle Mania. Probably the biggest show I won was like the Muscle Mania Worlds, whatever, their junior show in Las Vegas. Junior means I believe it was under 21. So I was a good young bodybuilder. I was a good under 21-year-old bodybuilder. And it brought me to so many places and so much understanding. What I didn't realize at the time is going through fitness, I was learning some of the most phenomenal skills in terms of manipulating variables with nutrition, sleep, and exercise to transform the body. And I was also starting to train and help other people along the process. That led me eventually into Naturopathic Medical School, where I was trained to understand the holistic picture of how the body works, and then pulling all those experiences together to help a lot of guys that were coming into the office when I was doing my direct one-on-one medical training. And they're like, these are guys like my dad, busy, working their butts off, like didn't have the behavioral psychology and the structure to integrate health into their lives. So I started developing this program. How can I apply everything I've learned into fitness with everything I learned in my medical training with the psychology aspects to develop a program? Took us 10 years, but that's where the Fit Father Project came from. It was a program that started, in a lot of ways in the memory of my dad, but in so many ways, this idea that there are a lot of guys, especially guys probably listening to this show, that are feeling like they're pulled in a lot of different directions in life through the busyness and the responsibilities. Health gets put on the back burner, or it's not able to stay consistent. And it turns out that if you do understand some behavioral psychology stuff, you get some sustainable structures in place, you can have it all in terms of a healthy body and a busy life and integrating those things. So that's what I spend my time doing is helping men do that. We do it through the vehicle, the Fit Father Project, and our other company, the Fit Mother Project. So I'm really happy to be here. That's a quick foray into a life story, but I can pause there for now.
Yeah, no, that's great. There's tons that we could unpack there, and I think much like you, for me, I didn't understand it at the time. I got into bodybuilding. I got into training. Right out of high school. I dabbled in weightlifting and whatnot for sports reasons while going to school. But literally the day I graduated high school, I'm like I left the small town I was in, moved closer to Tampa to get ready to go to school here, and I'm like, I'm gonna change the way that I look. I wasn't heavy. I was soft and kind of squishy. I was a very athletic kid. I didn't have a lot of base and substance to it. But that first summer, right out of high school, my physique just changed. I mean, within a matter of just a few months. And I stayed consistent with it all through my 20s, and I started competing around 24, 25. And now that I kind of look back at that decade that I spent, you know, I can see all the lessons, all the disciplines that I acquired, the certain character traits that have enabled me to, you know, find success as, you know, as an entrepreneur, you know, enduring the hardships of starting a company and like staying on the grind. And then now in the addiction side of things, like I realized like a guy struggles, you know, in my world due to either lack of discipline or lack of a belief in himself, because he's probably tried and failed before. And I think those are two things that you acquire not knowingly while doing it, but you know, through the development of getting ready for a show. Like you willingly like put yourself through pain and discomfort. So talk about, you know, if you can, like what have been some of the, you know, character traits or life skills that you've developed and how you've applied that both in your business, but then in the balancing of your work life, you know, growing a company. Just what has bodybuilding really brought to you as a person?
A couple things immediately come to mind. One is, and this is I think is also very clear from the research, is your ability to delay gratification, to like invest energy and effort today so that something in the future will pay off big, is at the heart of bodybuilding and training. I mean, you train, you don't instantly get bigger. You exert effort, and then over the time you recover and things get better. And that is just a huge skill in life, where you have the ability, especially with business, right? Fit Father Project is very successful now, but there was probably 3 or 4 years of making no money and just putting content out online constantly, right? Delayed gratification. What I learned from bodybuilding was that, sure, you don't start off deadlifting, whatever, but after, you know, 4 years of consistent effort putting in the reps, you do get there. So I think that's number one. Number two is you get to learn a lot about mental chatter and not necessarily believing thoughts that come into your mind. So, for example, one of the early training programs that I did in high school that was beautiful was like super squats. Basically, the 20 rep squat set. You drink a gallon of milk, and it was like as simple as a high school boy could do it. But you do like pick your weight you can do for 10 reps on squats, and you do it for 20. The bar stays on your back for several minutes. Like you're doing whatever it takes, right? That is such a beautiful thing that training teaches you, because you get to face one more rep. You don't squat 20 reps in a row. You squat maybe 5 to 10 reps, and then you do 10 sets of one effectively. Mm-hmm. But what it teaches you is that when you encounter and face hard things, that you have a reservoir that's very deep, and how you perceive the challenge is often how hard the challenge feels. You can almost always do one more rep. I mean, obviously that does fail at some point, but the concept there is certainly teaches you how to stay in the thick of things, to be calm. And maybe if your mind's screaming at you that you can stop, but there's that part of you that knows that you're just going to descend anyway into the next rep, like that's a really beautiful experience. The other thing I think that's very relevant is planning and structure and goals. So the cool thing about competing in bodybuilding is you're like, I have a show. It's in 12 to 16 weeks. This is when I'm going to start my diet. These are roughly the macros that I start with, and we change and adjust from there. Bodybuilders are some of the most regimented people on the planet. You're doing it with your exercise, with your training, with your nutrition, your sleep, your supplementation. So that regimentation can be applied to any goal in life. You create a container for it. I think this is what we do with our program members, right? They join our front end program, and it's a 30-day program. We do that for a reason, not that you're going to change your health and your life in 30 days, but it's a short enough structure that we can create a very specific game plan, and it works like that. So I think having vision and then applying the discipline, the rhythms of structure is for sure huge from the training side. And I also think there's a great lesson too in bodybuilding, in physical fitness, in that, well, I say bodybuilding specifically, you train for potentially years, but at least like 4 weeks before a show, or 4 months before a show, I should say. And you get to that show day and you're on stage for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Like it's such a short amount of time, but yet you invested hundreds, if not thousands of hours in preparation. So it also teaches you inherently that the gift can't be where the judges feel like you fell on the scorecard that day. The gift is certainly everything that you were able to do through the application of effort and will and the transformation that you made. You know, it's nice to win shows, and I loved winning shows, but it's always you against you at the end of the day. And I think another fun thing about bodybuilding, as you get further down, like it's good to be a good amateur bodybuilder, but as you go deeper in the ranks, the tough, some of the tough realities of life do set in as well. And that's the fact that there's probably someone on stage with better genetics than you. And I think that's important to understand too. It's like in life, if we keep measuring sticks to be external things of necessarily other people, like it doesn't quite work like that, especially with a sport that has these kinds of baked in disadvantages. And I think in today's day and age, it's really important to play your unique hand, the one you were given, to the best ability possible, and be able to have the self-awareness of what that is, and then to go assess and deploy that. And I think bodybuilding teaches you that as well.
God, that in and of itself, like we could end right now and like just put that out to the world and be like, guys, stay in your own lane, focus on the process, not the outcome, and learn to delay gratification. Those were kind of the big three takeaways of kind of what, everything that you shared there for me. I want to zoom in a little bit on the instant gratification side of things. Obviously, I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Walter Michel's work out of Stanford, with the marshmallow test.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, there it's they did the experiment with the young kids. Here's one marshmallow. If you wait, when we return back, you'll get two. So, knowing that they were that young at the time, that there's obviously a genetic component to instant gratification. Do you believe that you're either born with the ability to delay gratification? Obviously, some people will lean more towards having it naturally, but do you feel if you weren't born with it, are you kind of like, are you lost there, or what would be some practical strategies that people can apply to learn to get better at delaying gratification?
Mm-hmm. Well, I do think it's both. Your ability to develop the strength to say no to momentary desire for long-term vision payoff has a genetic component, but by and large can be trained by absolutely anyone. And I'll say this too, and this is the sad truth as well. We don't get to choose our parents, like in the conscious sense. I mean, we just have our parents and they raise us in a particular way. And I think these things come back to our ability to delay or not delay gratification comes back to very even early in how humans develop. Like the baby comes out of mom, baby instantly has the instinct to latch onto the breast and to start to suckle for milk. And this is the first appearance of desire in awareness that we have, and it's instinctual. And when we don't get what we want, we cry. And then mom comes and gives us more milk, et cetera. And this is the cycle that begins to develop the early foundation of the human psyche through this kind of reward feedback loop, I guess you could say. I believe that good parenting early on in life can really help shape kids' experience with having a mind and psychology and the neurotransmitters associated with that can delay gratification. Like the more we can teach our kids from a young age to do these things and not just continuously like reward all these little desires, that is good training. But as adults, the responsibility I guess we have is to continuously work on perfecting ourselves in training. One thing that I think is incredibly practical to start to do this is by building this training into your very daily rhythms and structures. And I mean specifically with food timing and eating. I think one way that people can train themselves to observe thoughts but not necessarily act on them instantly is intermittent fasting and stuff like this. You time restrict your eating just a little bit because it's just giving you a chance every day to flex your willpower in a sense of saying, oh yeah, I have my last, after dinner I brush my teeth and I'm not having a meal until the next day. You're kind of baking this into your routine. And the stuff seems small, but you really are getting successful reps and it stacks up day after day. You do that for 365 days, you have stronger willpower. So that's a good place to certainly start to work on aiming these things. Exercise as well, right? Every time you get to the last few reps of those sets, this is the psychological benefit of exercise, and you have a lot of these thoughts that immediately arise of you wanting to stop, oh, you're burning, oh, you've done enough, you said you were only going to do 10, but you feel like you can get 12, you come face to face with the situation. And I think it's easier to do it in the playground of the body through food and exercise, and then that translates into all the other things that are working in like the business, the families, et cetera.
No, that's great. I love that you brought up the parenting part there, because I did want to ask you about your mom and just the relationship that you had there, and maybe what were some of the lessons that she learned. Obviously, losing as a boy, growing, developing and becoming a man, like losing your dad at such a young age, you had to have a strong mom, to end up where you are
no doubt,
today.
Yeah.
So, what were some of the maybe the lessons, or was your mom like obviously health conscious? Like, was she, dedicated to her health and fitness? And what role did kind of that relationship play in developing you?
So I have an incredibly strong mom, and I think she was forged. She became strong through this process. Not to say she wasn't before, but I mean, you get thrown into a situation where you have two boys under 10 effectively, and your husband just died. Like, you need to scrape a lot of things together. Something that my mom did was amazing, is to support the family. We lived on in Pacific time, or Pacific Mountain Time in Arizona. She would wake up early, and she learned how to trade some stocks. So she would trade stocks in the morning and make a little bit of money on the days that she was trading, and that helped put food on the table for us. And so she effectively had to balance out her feminine nurturing nature with a masculine rule of order. Like, she got very tough, and she had to embody both of those energies, if you will. And that's not to say all moms are purely nurturing and all dads are purely order. These are just like ideas and representations of the masculine and the feminine that we all embody. But she really had to step up and embody both of those. I think a good thing was she only had so much bandwidth, and she had us two and trying to hold life together. So we couldn't be micromanaged. So my brother and I got the opportunity to do a lot of experimentation and to make mistakes and to like learn from direct experience and not be too sheltered in that sense. And I think that was really good in helping me explore psychological boundaries and touching the stove and getting burned and these kinds of things, like very helpful for, I guess, helping me develop my psyche. So I would say two things. It's like, strong mom, I always felt love. And that's what I'll say I'm very grateful, because although I didn't grow up with a dad, or I grew up with the feeling that I was absolutely loved. And I think there's a lot of people that maybe are in households with two parents who don't necessarily even have that love and security. So again, we're all dealt these different hands, but I think we can still apply these same principles into, our own lives and examine things to make things better.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you, opening up and sharing that. One thing I love about, just your language, like we speak a very similar, in terms of fitness. I've heard you say manipulating variables, pulling levers, all the time. Like I get people that ask me, like, what's the best rep scheme, or what's the best workout, or what's the best diet for X, or, and the way that I look at things nowadays, and this has been obviously, due to 15 plus years of working with some of the best coaches, trainers, experts, so forth and so forth. It's like, nutrition is a tool. It's a lever that can be pulled. Pick one, pull it. Training is a tool. It's a lever. Pick one, pull it. You don't pull them all at the same time, though, because I had a trainer one time. He's like, imagine, and this is for contest prep. Like, you go into the prep, it's like you're going to battle. Would you ever go into battle and just unload every single round within your gun? It's like, no, you shoot one, you see, did it nail the target? How far is it going to go? So where I'm getting to is, obviously you're trained, educated, you have your degrees. Who were you learning from, if anybody? Did you have coaches, mentors coming up in the strength, fitness, muscle building space?
Tons, man. So many. I feel like if I look back on each decade, I've had a couple like very key mentors. I was commenting on your video behind you, but I think one of my early mentors came from a book. I remember when I just started training, I was maybe around 12, 13, I was getting more intense into it. I got the Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding. And you're just learning tidbits from all these great, bodybuilders and power athletes from the 60s, 70s, 80s. It was like incredible to get that kind of wisdom. For different contest preps, I had various coaches, and so many people helped me. Actually, this is funny enough. He's now very super famous, but one of my bodybuilding shows in college, I hired Lane Norton before he was like a big deal to like do some of my macros and nutrition. And it's been beautiful to see. I don't know if he remembers me as a client, but it was beautiful to see like just like help is accessible if you start to knock, and you can find great help to help dial you in. At this stage I'd say, so bodybuilding, I had a lot of mentors, books, online resources. I tried so many different training plans. I think having a beginner's mindset is probably one of the best things you can do, because there's like almost a stage of something where you start to build some proficiency, and then ego often creeps in. You think you know more than you do. Like, man, I thought I knew so much about health and fitness like before I went to medical school, and now I feel like I know much, much less. But I guess the ego kind of creeps in, but that shuts you off to possibilities, because it makes your thinking so much more rigid and solidified. And I think, man, if anything in the health, fitness, nutrition community, like we've been wrong about dogmatic things to like such a big extent over the last like 20 years that it's really good to maintain that flexibility and just to try different stuff and be experimentation in your own direct experience. When I got more into business, like I started competitive bodybuilding when I was 18. I did it till I was probably about 25 or so. And I was, after 7 years of doing like 10, 15 shows, like I scratched that itch and I got through my fill, and I got really passionate about like, how do you build online businesses and distribute information and build a company and like get paid for it. So I had tons of mentors in business, a lot of them books and a lot of them groups and masterminds that I joined to learn. And a lot of them were just, quite frankly, my peers and friends that were a little farther ahead of me, who I still get to do business with today, which is amazing. Like my web guy and the guy who writes emails and copy for our sites were like my friends when I was 21 in the same mastermind group. So it's really beautiful to grow together. Now at this stage in my life, I truly believe that I've gotten exposed to so many things. I feel like my own internal guide is the one that I listen to the most. I've consumed a lot of information over the last 20 years, and now it's more about wisdom, and I think wisdom is gained through direct experience. So really just weighing things and thinking about things deeply in my own mind is kind of where I'm at in terms of this exact stage.
Yeah, that's great. I know Lane, not super well personally. He's here in Tampa. Tampa's like, a hub for fitness professionals. It's been really cool to see. I can't say I agree with everything. Probably really disagree with maybe some of his approach to some of his messaging and whatnot, but that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, I think, the understanding of like, information is always evolving. We're always learning new things. I was having a conversation literally just yesterday with somebody at lunch talking about my first NASM certification, probably back in like 2003, 2004. It was like, we were taught, it was in the textbook, fat burns in a carbohydrate flame. Like, we used to tell everybody, like, you got to eat carbs every 3 hours to keep the metabolism burning. It's like, how the hell were we, how did that make it into a textbook? Cause obviously that's been clearly debunked. Now you competed naturally as a natural competitor?
Yeah, I did. I would say I competed naturally through probably 80 to 95%. At the end, the only NPC shows I did is I did the Arnold Classic in men's physique like years ago, and I was actually a bodybuilder. I was a natural bodybuilder, but I did Arnold Classic in men's physique because like I was trying to be as big as possible, and you throw me in some board shorts and I look like just like the rest of the guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
what year was that?
Man, it must have been 2000, maybe 14, 15 or 16.
Okay, I was there. I was there in 14 and 15. Not that like we would have ran into each other. There's 100,000 people at the event.
Totally, that was a cool experience though, for sure to be there. And I remember like I was working out at Lifetime Fitness a couple days before in Columbus, Ohio, and I saw John Meadows there, and this was before John Meadows blew up. And I went up to him. I'm like, man, you really changed my thinking about a lot of nutrition. I shook his meaty hand, and I was like, I'm glad I did. I always look back fondly, and rest in peace, John Meadows. I mean, also a guy who was a great mentor to me. Because I'm in Arizona, I'd pop down on occasion to like the Gold's down in Venice area, and I always love to keep like written training logs, and you see so many cool people there. So I remember I had a training log that Dexter Jackson, after he won the Mr. O, signed, and I love that. It's so cool today's day and age with the connectivity of people that you can have world-class mentors literally through this smartphone device. It's just how you direct your attention and use this stuff. The power is incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm glad you brought up, Meadows there. Like God rest his soul. We lost an amazing person in the industry. Talking about Instagram and social media. I remember, this was when I was more focused on the fitness stuff. So I have Frank Rich Fitness. It's a very small, nothing compared to what you're doing with Fit Father Project. I don't really focus on growing it anymore. It just kind of organically sits out there. But when I was actively involved in really trying to grow that, like I shared a lot of fitness stuff, and Meadows was somebody that just like you, was a virtual mentor to me. I had a membership subscription to his site for a long time, bought some of his programs. He was a person I learned, about intra-workout nutrition from, the carbohydrate brand cyclic dextrin, which has changed the game for me from a training standpoint, from this physique development. But I remember I shared a post where I was doing the Meadows row, like on the landmine, and I tagged him in it. And he started following me. And I sent him a message, and we had a conversation, like with somebody that, like I said, I'd been following and reading his articles and watching his videos for, at that point, 4 years. It was just life changing. I was like, wow, I can have a conversation with this guy, and he's going to respond back to me. He's going to follow me. Like, I remember I took a screenshot of it, like circled it, and I was like, I finally made it big. But he was something really, really special. So. God, there's so many places we can.
Well, it makes me think of something as you're talking. We have all this information immediately accessible through these supercomputers in our hands, but yet people are producing very different lives from this stuff. In terms of the actions that take, it seems that to me that it's not access that's power; it's your ability to consistently direct your attention towards what your natural inborn desires are. So that's the game, right? I mean, first get in touch with what desires are coming into your being and awareness. So for you and I, we both shared the desire to build a lot of muscle and get big for many reasons. So a lot of people share that desire, but then it shifts to business, it shifts to impact, whatever those desires shift. But we got to identify that desire and then be very intentional about where we put our attention if we're creating or consuming. In my 20s, my mantra, before I got into some meditation and deeper spiritual stuff, my mantra was I'm a creator, not a consumer. And I obviously still did consume, books and stuff like this that was making me better, but in a way that almost felt like creation of knowledge and wisdom. But I think more people that are looking to start things, if you can really audit the amount of time you spend creating versus consuming things, that one framework alone will change your life. Because to make money and impact people, you need to create tangible value in the marketplace. And that means create tangible value. You need to create something. It's a video, it's an article, it is a post, it is a coaching program. And this all comes down to just channeling attention. So that's that's the meta skill. Isn't that not bodybuilding too? I mean, it's the foundation of all of this creation stuff we're doing.
Yeah, there's so much we can unpack with this right here. Because I know there's gonna be guys hearing this. They're like, I'm listening to Dr. Anthony. He's a national competitive bodybuilder. He's got the DR before his name. He's got multiple degrees. He's holds certifications. He's been doing this for 15, 20 years. And I'm listening to Frank interview him, and Frank's got a background in bodybuilding. He's started and had some success in multiple companies. But this guy's head is like, it's not me. I don't have that experience. I don't have that background. I don't have that knowledge. So if somebody is struggling to even think about what is the value that they could deliver, bring to the world, or how to shift from consumer to creator, what would be something, of inspiration or motivation you could say to a guy like that to get him out of his own head and just start taking action?
Yeah, here's the thing. I think it all springs from the well of our own natural desires and interests. We're all wired so differently into the things we gravitate towards. You look on today's day and age, you look online into all these niche communities. There's people who are gathering around all sorts of different, tiny, interesting topics. And the reason I say that first is because if you can start to direct your effort in this bucket or direction of something you enjoy and you're passionate about, it's so much easier to create without resistance because you're participating in something. So the first real thing is to start to turn internally and what excites you? What do you enjoy doing? And I like to start from that framework too, because it reminds me of that Steve Jobs quote. He's like, if you don't love what you do, you're going to quit. You'd be crazy to continue doing it. So you have to start directing your effort into a domain that you're interested in. It can literally be anything. And then you can, once you dive deeper into that domain, you ask yourself, what value can I create in relation to this? And there's so many things you can get into these days, but if you don't start with the right direction, you can be throwing effort in different areas of your life that create too much friction and you won't stick to it. So it's internal turning. What do you desire? What do you really enjoy? And then you go from there.
Can I don't want to say I'm going to challenge you, but
push back.
I don't want to push back, but I want to get your, because you understand the brain. You have your degree in neuroscience. Obviously, things that we consume, things that we look at specifically, can begin to change and kind of obviously it plays a role in not changing our core desires, but what we believe to perceive as a desire. So can you speak to, rewriting or reprogramming some of what we believe to be our thoughts, and how that can change what we believe to be the desires? And obviously, I think specifically what I'm trying to address here.
I do, but I will answer it from with almost like an analogy, and this is my understanding of through my direct experience of how this works. So our awareness, our consciousness, like, which is effectively the ever-present now attention, right? We are aware. There is the now, like this is awareness, okay? That is effectively a blank screen, if you will, that is then colored by the inflow of everything, the outflow of our emotions and feelings. There's this inflow and outflow that's coloring this screen. I believe it's very important when you're starting to ask yourself these deeper questions about what really, like, what brings me alive, brings me passion and joy, is to first to cut out a lot of the noise of the inflow. Because I think you're absolutely right? When we're surrounded by all sorts of different things, different perceptions, limiting beliefs, stuff other people's doing, it's a lot of noise that colors that screen and doesn't give us the ability to really reflect that attention inward to get a true answer on what actually inspires and brings life to us. So I think there's a fasting thing. If someone is at a point right now where they don't know what they're really into and they need to make a shift, like, get off social media for like a good chunk of time. I would say even like maybe even 30, 60, 90 days. Like, turn it off for a second, because you'll have so much more bandwidth for not processing all that other stuff to get in touch with your inner being. The other thing that is absolutely true, just from a neurochemical standpoint, is if you're in a cycle right now with something in your life, whether it's a substance, whether it's porn, whatever it is, where you're basically always in this dopamine deficiency thing, because you're constantly needing that next hit of dopamine, receptors are saturated, and it's just, you need to constantly level yourself out. Like, that needs to be addressed directly. As almost like a primary starting point, because I believe what you get on the tail end of that is, once you have rebalanced yourself and your behaviors and your neurochemistry, you get the feelings of peace, clarity, and power. Like, people talk about how much better they feel when they get off porn, for example, right? And I've certainly experienced that in my own life. You feel like you have peace, clarity, and power, and you can actually create from a standpoint of not being a slave to something that's dragging you back into this hole of taking your attention and controlling you. So I think that maybe it's this purification, right? Maybe there's not an exact domain we know that we need to move into. We don't know what we're passionate about, but certainly we could even take the meta game of just purifying ourselves and cleaning this up and cutting attachments to these things that are keeping us a slave in our awareness. I think that's a beautiful place to start, and ultimately that's like the whole container for all of this creation game.
Yeah, the language that we've used here is, there's an unwiring and rewiring process. Everybody asks, like, how do I fully, go through a reboot? Reboot is kind of like the industry term, when porn addiction. It's like, well, first you have to stop consuming the garbage that you've been putting into your brain for however long. That's the first thing, is you got to stop. But that in of itself is not going to fully get you on the other side of this thing. So you stop consuming 30, 60, 90 days, like you said, but then you start pulling some of these other levers, talking about kind of some of the neurotransmitters. So understanding, like, how can we trigger and release serotonin? How can we trigger and release dopamine through natural activities that we do? Simple acts of service, spending some time in gratitude every single morning, getting calm, doing some meditation, to just be present in the moment. So full, 100% full in agreement. I wanted to address it, and obviously, having a doctor that understands neuroscience, it's something we can take advantage of.
I want to say this too, because what you brought up is what is our life but a stitched together bunch of days. Like, each day we get this, like, we wake up from sleep, which a lot of the ancient spiritual traditions call like the mini death. Like, we go into unconsciousness, and then we wake up the next day and we have this slate through which we can create. Well, what I've certainly learned through all my fitness and medical training is that keeping the body, the physical structure, in good rhythm through circadian rhythm with light and dark cycles is just so key for having balanced neurochemistry. So that's another huge area. If someone's not sleeping well, if they're not getting up in the morning, drinking water and getting some sunshine on their skin and their eyes, these are simple things that we all skip over, but because we forget that these bodies are so interconnected with the light and the environment. So for getting the clarity and the starting point to have a life of creation, you almost need to, like, clean up a lot of these just basic daily physical routines, structures, and patterns. And that is a lot of work. I'm not going to make it seem simple, but it's probably the most worthy work, because if it's not addressed, you're carrying this stuff with you throughout everything that you do, and you eventually will have to. It's just going to keep on creating suffering into the future for you and biting you in the ass if you don't address these things. And I'm speaking from direct personal experience. And that's also not to say that this is a dragon that you slay once and for all and it never comes back. It's to say that it's a constant, over time, as you continue to fight these battles, you get stronger, and it no longer becomes a battle. But it's just like, no matter where you're at, I just think I said that dragon sentence because I believe also don't want guys to feel guilty if you ever feel like you backslide at certain times, because life is this cyclical thing, right? We're here to trend upward, not to always be on this direct linear path every single moment.
Yeah, we're all flawed by nature. There's no perfect person. Nobody is, and if they're claiming that they are perfect, like, that should be a major warning sign. Like, I definitely still am a work in progress. Sleep is something I've paid a lot of attention to, very intentional about screen time late at night, about lighting, both in the evening and in the morning. You shared a few in kind of your explanation there, but I just want to maybe circle back there. What are some of the kind of the key habits or key principles around a healthy sleep pattern, both in the evening and then in the morning, if a guy's struggling with getting good sleep and rest?
I'll tell you what I do, and I'll talk about maybe some of the physiology of this stuff. So what's amazing about our eyes is they're directly connected to our brain. Like, literally, we have these eyeballs, right, that light's coming into, and there's that optic nerve that runs right back into the brain. So it's like almost the eyes are an extension of the brain.
I was going to say, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Andrew Huberman out of Stanford, but the way that he describes it, it's like they are one and of the same. Eyes, brain, spinal cord is the nervous system. That's what comprises the nervous system. So they're not even an extension. They are a part of it. It's the only part that sits outside of our body.
And it happens to be our dominant sense. And so the brain gives a lot of credence and processing power to what comes in through the eyes. Now, what's important to know, and this is a little more of a philosophical perspective, is this body, these human bodies, although we live in modern convenience and technology, are directly connected and came from nature. Like, before we had lights, these bodies were directly in tune with the fact that the sun rises in the morning, gives off particular spectrum of light, interacts with our eyes and our skin. Our skin obviously has receptors to create vitamin D and all sorts of different awesome stuff. And then at nighttime, when light falls, the difference in the light creates changes in the brain. So exactly what happens is this. You wake up in the morning. In ideal situation, if we're living more in harmony with natural cycles, we're getting sunshine in our eyes and our skin. We know how important vitamin D is. We know we burn through it in stress. We know that have a strong immune system and cancer protective benefits. You want vitamin D. Supplements are cool. The best kind of vitamin D you can get is the sulfated form that you get through the sun in contact with your skin before the sun gets too hot in the day. So when it's up before noon, you get some in your skin and in your eyes. What's amazing is that when the light comes into your eyes, it triggers this area of your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and then your brain starts making serotonin. And serotonin is that feel-good neurotransmitter. It's for social bonding. When we have serotonin, we just feel like things are good, right? And so we get serotonin production from sunlight. And what sunlight also does is it smooths out that cortisol rhythm in the morning. So naturally, we have cortisol that rises to get us going, to liberate some blood sugar, to get activity into the body, and that's natural and good. But we don't want cortisol to continue to skyrocket. We want it to have this gradual release and get lower as the day goes on. Well, sunshine, they've shown from research, actually helps smooth out that cortisol rhythm, doesn't make it spike so much. So it has an anti-stress benefit, you could say. And as light goes down at night, we have the pineal gland, which is a very special area of the brain that's releasing melatonin that the body has made partly from serotonin production earlier. Melatonin is anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer. It does so much more than just regulate our sleep patterns. It's hugely anti-inflammatory in the brain. It's just really, really important. And they even show that melatonin supplementation can help women lose weight, and it probably has some effect in men too. But point being is these master hormones are controlled by light, so we need to be very guarded about our light. The problem is we have these things, right? We have cell phones and computers and stuff, and they're kicking off a spectrum of light, blue light, that's damaging to melatonin production. So the punchline of this is when the sun is going down, it's probably time for you to start cutting down on your light exposure and getting filters on your screens that's not blasting that bright light that disrupts melatonin production. That's point number one. So I have software on my computer because I spend a lot of time on my computer, online business owner, where the screen gets that sepia orangey color at night, right? Same thing on our family's phone. phones. And in the morning, I'm also getting sunshine. Now, as it relates to circadian rhythm, one thing that's pretty clear is having regular wake and sleep times is good. Like, it's good to wake up around the same time every day, even if you didn't get quite as much sleep that night before, because the body runs on these rhythmic clocks, and the more consistent and structured you make it, the better. Our eating and our sleeping are very entrained cycles as well. So if you have consistent meal timing, it actually helps your body maintain a good circadian rhythm. They found this through people who do a lot of international travel. If they fast and resync up their breakfast or whatever to the proper cycles, it helps the circadian rhythm move. So I think like a structured meal timing, morning sunshine, cutting out on light at night. And I like to wind down with like some nice like evening teas. I'm like a big believer in tea. I think more people should drink tea for health and performance for sure. But like an evening relaxing tea is a nice thing to kind of wind down at night.
What about napping? What about midday napping? Does that play any role in these hormones and in our ability to get that melatonin released later on in the day? Just what's your take on?
This is my perspective on napping. I think if you need naps, if you feel the need to nap, it means that the demands your body is under physically are like necessitating that you need more sleep. So people, like athletes oftentimes take naps because you're doing a lot of training, you're taxing the nervous system to a substantial way. If you're not a very active person and you're napping, there is something not great in your physiology. Like you can make it through the whole day without sleep, but if you're getting the sense of you need to sleep, there's something not right. So my wife is pregnant right now and she naps all the time. She may even be sleeping right now, and it's like in the morning, right? 12:48 a.m. nap or a p.m. nap. So, but like it's just because the body has more demand. I think that certainly when I was working really hard on the computer in my 20s, I would do like power naps, like 20 minutes playing some things. And I think those can be rejuvenating. I would say if I had to take a stance, I don't believe that taking a midday nap is necessarily ideal. And it may be indicative of you not getting optimum sleep at night. But before we even talk about that, you almost need to get the body clean of stimulants. Like if you really want to like understand your sleep, you really get the body in a state where it's not reliant on caffeine or other things that are blocking some of these key adenosine receptors in the brain, et cetera. But we don't necessarily need to go down that rabbit hole. But if you are really interested in looking at your sleep patterns, a good thing you can do is a complete stimulant detox to feel like what your body's like when your nervous system is in like its center point equilibrium.
No, I think that is an important thing to get into a bit, because I know I have conversations every single day with people. It's like I need coffee to literally like open my, like I can get from the bedroom to the kitchen because I know I can navigate through my house. But I'm not talking about me. I'm saying like I've had these conversations. There's people listening to this, as we're speaking right now. So talk about that if you can. Like we shouldn't need coffee. It should be a supplement to accelerate us. Once again, it's a lever that should be pulled. It shouldn't be a lever that you always need to pull.
Exactly. So the best way to understand human energy is to look at the balance of the central nervous system. And there's a sympathetic, which is the activated branch, fight or flight as people often call it, and parasympathetic, which is this resting, relaxation, improves digestion and circulation to organs kind of state. And our body's constantly fluxing between these. Now, in ideal human health, we are in parasympathetic state the vast majority of the time. And we're able to activate the body into a sympathetic tone when we're exercising. If there is a stressful situation that comes up, it should not be our default state. Now, the problem, by and large, with there's a lot of problems with people's health today. One of them is absolutely the fact that we have a society as well as stimulants that are shifting people into a constant sympathetic tone. This puts more stress on the heart, it dysregulates blood sugars, and it's no reason. It's very easy to see why heart disease and diabetes and metabolic syndrome and weight gain are very clustered things in relation to that. Caffeine is very effective, and as a tool, it can be really good. Particularly before exercise, it has fat burning benefits. It can increase, exertion, time to exertion. It can create greater mental clarity. But in many ways, based on how caffeine works, it's borrowing energy from the future. One of caffeine's main mechanisms is it blocks adenosine from binding to adenosine receptors in the brain, and adenosine makes us sleepy. So it has a blocking effect in the brain. And so it's like we're getting adenosine because we're burning ATP, which is a signal to the brain that like we're using energy, but caffeine's kind of just like temporarily blocking that experience from happening. And it's kind of keying us up with a little bit of like external energy. And that's fine for a time being, but when it becomes a habitual thing, the nervous system ends up interacting with coffee in a way of reliance. And this is super common because one, coffee, caffeine, tea, like these things are potent. Like caffeine and the other stimulants in these things are potent. But two, the system gets dysregulated when you feel groggy, when you wake up and you need these things. They should be a tool, not a daily thing. Now, this is also coming from a guy who used caffeine super heavily throughout bodybuilding. I mean, it's a great fat burner. It's a great appetite suppressant. It really helps you get through a long diet. So it can be effective. But for your long-term health, I'm going to say that if you're a person that feels like you don't feel right without coffee, which is most people I'd have to say, is like, it's good to take a break once in a while and reset your nervous system to not rely on it. And it sucks. Withdrawals, it's a drug. It doesn't feel good for a week, but there are some things you can take, maybe like rhodiola, which is a good adaptogenic herb, quality nutrition, maybe some ashwagandha. There's different herbs you can help to tonify your nervous system so you're not relying on it. But for peak performance, I don't think it's great.
Yeah, I was going to say we did an entire episode on functional medicinal mushrooms, and there was quite a few there that will accelerate focus, increase energy. So go back and listen to that. I have very very clear and precise rule. Like if a sentence ever comes out of your mouth that goes, I need X in order to accomplish Y, that's a sign. So if you need coffee to get started in the morning, clearly there's a warning sign that needs to be addressed. I want to get into some of your spiritual practices, if you'd be open to talking about it a little bit, because I've heard you mentioned it a few times here. I know it's obviously not your wheelhouse of your work, but as somebody that is a doctor, is very centered around his health and fitness, what role does spirituality play in your life, and why is it important for people to have a spiritual practice from a health perspective, from optimizing health, from optimizing performance, and just fully living a healthy life?
Okay. Well, I think it's pretty clear from some cool research on like looking at like the blue zones, as they call them, these little pockets of longevity around the world where people live very long. And when they look at the commonalities between these cultures, whether they're people in Okinawa, Japan, or Sardinia, Italy, or Loma Linda, California, these groups that live a long time have very close family connections. They have a sense of meaning and purpose, and oftentimes they have a direct spiritual practice. And so these things, let's talk at like a little more on like the scientific understanding level. All of this is going to help keep you in a parasympathetic tone. All of this is going to secrete more serotonin in your life and keep cortisol levels slower if you have social support. So it's creating a neurochemical and central nervous system balance that promotes living a long, happy, healthy life. If you take an animal, in which the human body being that, and you were to stress the animal, keep it in constant fear, cortisol is high, that suppresses immune function. Cancer happens as creatures get older, and then boom, you have a recipe for that. Or it's putting more strain and tone on the heart. Heart has to hypertrophy. Maybe now you're under stress, and then you're going to sugary foods because the sugar helps like be a short-term solution for stress, and then now you're introducing more sugar into the system. So these different factors, spirituality being one of them, help keep the system more balanced and you more calm and peaceful. If you feel that you are in a relaxed state for most of the day, it's probably one of the greatest things for your longevity, because you always hear about those 110-year-old people who are like, she just turned 110 and she smoked every day of her life, and her secret of longevity was a little bit of whiskey before you went to bed. Well, I bet those people that do live a long time, like you look at their dispositions, they're not like burning bright flames. They're people that have learned to kind of like ride the flow of life and keep their system in a more relaxed state. I started studying after doing a lot of the reading consumption of just like modern conventional stuff. I started studying a lot of like ancient texts, particularly from India, and a lot of their like the yogic wisdom. And a lot of these old yogis used to say that effectively, if you can keep respirations, the amount of breath cycles you take under 12, but maybe even 8 per minute. So you're doing 8 breath cycles per minute, you live a long time. They believe that the breath was very powerful for that. And I think at the very least, we can say from modern scientific understanding that when the heart is working less. You know, like a free diver. I don't know, a free diver dives underneath and holds their breath for like 5-10 minutes. Their heart rate is so slowed, consciously slowed. Like the body's in this almost like suspended animation state. And we do know stories of humans that have sat down and practiced a lot of meditation, spiritual stuff that can sit there in almost like frozen states for like 10 days without moving. Like this is very well documented. Lots of people have done this. And it's because the system can get into a very relaxed and slow state. The heart rate can be slowed and the central nervous system can be relaxed. This is definitely a key to longevity in my understanding for sure. One that's not as simple as just taking resveratrol or focusing on the next NAD supplement. All that stuff's cool and definitely beneficial, but I think there's a deeper cut to this. Now, when I began to get to the spirituality, when I began studying some of these ancient yogic texts, there was a book that I read that just blew my mind. It's called the Mandukya Upanishad. So the Upanishads are these ancient wisdom texts from India, and the Mandukya, Mandukya, is like a really important one of these. And it basically says this, that our essential nature is the fact that we are aware. And we think of ourselves as like our bodies and our minds as we're participating in the waking state. Yet when we go to sleep every night and we're dreaming, we're also aware of the dreams. And the dream world is almost like it's like a continuation of like the waking state. It's like we think of our lives as what happens between 6 a.m. and like 10 p.m., whatever time people go to bed, and then we almost don't think of what happens when we're dreaming as much real life. It's like the dream world, and then we wake up and get back to the real world. And this book starts to collapse that distinction and starts you to understand that these states are really one continuum of awareness, and things are simply changing. And I think this is an insight that a lot of people have when they start meditating. And this is something that I couldn't be consistent with for years until I understood some of the deeper philosophical underpinnings of this. But I sit down every morning. My routine is I'll get up, I'll rehydrate, I'll walk my dog for 10, 15 minutes, get some sunshine in my eyes, and I'll sit down for meditation before I put any food in my body. And the meditation practice, there's many different things you can do, but simply I have a chair and I have a little dedicated room next to my office. I sit down, close my eyes, straight spine, and spend some time in meditation, which is just really being aware of being aware is the simplest aspect there. Now, regardless if there's a underpinning spiritual connotation to this for any person, like it certainly does train your mind to become less active. And it trains you also to be an observer of the activity of the mind without being reactive. So I can think back to times where, I was in my 20s and, I would call it, I definitely had some dependence on porn. What often happens is for me is you'd be late at night and you had a long, stressful day. And then a thought pops in your mind of like, maybe I should watch some porn. Like that thought comes up into awareness. And I think what immediately happens for many people who have an addiction is they become merged with that thought. Like that thought becomes the direct experience of like, I must. And that thought then compels you into open the browser, incognito browser tab and get to work. Like, so like that's the next thing that happens. But when you begin to meditate, you start to understand yourself as the whole awareness itself, not just the thoughts that arise. So you could see that thought. That thought still may arise, and that feeling and that desire still may arise. But now you have a space and a consciousness to choose whether or not to go create on that thought. Do I actually want to go there? It's like the space between stimulus and response. And there really was no space. It's just awareness. But this is something you learn from meditation. So it makes you less reactive to anything that may happen. And you also get to sit more in the vantage point of power and choice. So I believe that meditating and spending some time just getting centered in your own awareness and feeling like the now moment, if you will, in the morning and in the evening are really important times to like bookend this quote unquote waking state day. Evening is very important too because it gives you the chance to effectively unload any baggage from the day and kind of close these mental loops that often get carried into the dream state. So we dream about things that we captured in our awareness and they kind of bubble up in the dreaming state, and they're very important. Like people have been studying what we can learn from our own personal dreams, but we dream about things that are either desires, angst and frustrations, things that we want to accomplish, or deep-seated fears and nightmares. Like these things that bubble up are really coming from our core subconscious into our awareness in the dream state. And when you start to do these different awareness practices, a lot of that stuff just gets like burned off. Like the patterns of energy that we used to continue to strengthen by acting on, and those patterns of energy are patterned into neural firing networks. So it's like just depends on what level we're talking about how this is happening, but they get weaker over time as you don't continue to groove these things by identifying with them. So it's like that space and awareness, I believe, is really powerful. And I think that transcends whatever religion you may follow or been brought up in, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu. Like, this awareness practice seems to be at the heart of all of those things. And it's kind of just how to maintain like a pure, clean being as a human, which often means unwinding and purifying because we've created a bunch of patterns.
Yeah, I love that. One of the best feelings that I get to have, Anthony, is when I get to talk to people that are way smarter than me, and they just reconfirm things that I'm already doing and have a part of our work. So we have meditation in our porn addiction recovery. Like it is a part of the program. The way we set it up and explain it, it's like, I'm not asking you to sit down and hula and ha-ha and chant and, do all these things that, probably some men associated with. It's like, oh, I'm not going to do that because I'm not, I'm not that weird yogi. It's not what I'm asking you to do. And I'm also not telling you that by meditating for 5 to 10 minutes every single morning, it's going to make that trigger go away. But you said it exactly there. It's like the practice of the meditation is to equip you so when that trigger comes, you have the tools to work through it and to be able to navigate that issue, which you haven't been able to do prior to implementing and using this practice. And then, yeah, I'm so glad you ended there with the, the religion side of things, because I'm a Christian and it is a major, it's the most important part of my life. But to a certain degree, I look at faith, or, my belief, my faith in Christ and who he is, and spiritual practices, what I was asking you about, as two different things. And I think a lot of people bring them together, but I think what we talked here, about just the meditation, the breathing, the controlling your thought, like that is what I see as spirituality. And then I have my, I have my beliefs, I have my worldview, or my faith. And that's what I spend time in prayer, and, I read the Bible, and I attend church. That's where I go to get that stuff filled. And I'll still meditate and have all those other practices as well. So I do believe that there's something that we can have both separate. So
these spiritual practices equip you to connect deeper in whatever avenue that you're connecting deepest in, whether it's through Christianity. They clean your heart. And like, I think like prayer, this idea of prayer that is retained and conserved across all the great religions is the idea of aligning thought with feeling in the direction of typically like love, devotion, trust, faith, like these kind of feelings, but it's aligning thought and feeling. And you can only really do that effectively when you're clean inside, when you're feeling like you're pure, when you have power and awareness over your awareness of your consciousness itself. It's like, how much are you really praying when you're sitting there and your mind is racing on all the things that you need to do tomorrow, or like you have the background angst because your belly is bloated because you ate too much crap, at dinner, or any of these physical disturbances that are just ripples of our past actions. You become more clear in whatever faith that you do follow. You can connect more deeply with that, and like that's just kind of seems like how it is to me.
Absolutely. As I'm looking at the time here, I'm realizing we're coming up on the end here, and I have done a horrible job of guiding this conversation, because we started talking about your company and Fit Father Project, and then we haven't brought it up in the 60 minutes of us.
This is really good.
So tell us a little bit about what you guys do over there, and where people can learn more. Give us the elevator pitch spiel, and obviously there's going to be some guys after hearing you talk today. I know they're going to be interested in learning more and whatnot. So yeah, tell us about Fit Father Project.
So you can find us by Googling Fit Father Project, finding Fit Father Project on YouTube, or going to fitfatherproject.com. My team and I, we help busy guys in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s like lose weight, build muscle, and create like a sustainable, healthy lifestyle, which is focusing on the stuff we talked about today in a very real sense. Like, what's your daily structures? What's the behavioral psychology? What are some joint-friendly workouts to work for you when your body's a little beat up? And like, how do you make this nutrition stuff sustainable without being restrictive? And then we have, a community of like 50,000 program members in over 100 countries all supporting one another. So it's like, it's just an amazing place. So if people are looking to improve themselves and are very focused on the domain of their physical health and getting those structures in place, like, we have an amazing program process. We'd love for people to reach out to our team, to join our programs and check that stuff out.
Absolutely. And does a guy need to have kids? Does he need to be a father? Does he need to be a dad for it to work for
No,
him?
we
Or
have guys in their 30s without kids. I say the majority of our programmers happen to be in that season of life where after 20 years of kids and busyness, they've packed on those 30, 40 extra pounds. But no, I mean, anyone who wants to transform their life, these principles are not age specific. It just so happens that you're going to be using workouts that are a little smarter and going to not jack you up, which I think is a good idea if you're as a man who's accumulated some injuries from heavy lifting and other bad decisions. Like, it's a good idea to train smart the younger you are too. So there's a benefit to starting with the proper methodology young.
100%. Yeah, I'm definitely an advocate of intelligent training, biomechanics background and whatnot. Obviously, having as many success stories, 30,000 plus lives transformed and changed. I'm sure you've collected a lot of data on what works, but I'm assuming you probably had some guys that haven't had success as well. So can you share with us maybe, one or two, key principles or key characteristic traits that make guys successful either in your program or just in transforming their life? And what have you seen that keeps guys from really succeeding and really transforming?
Okay, I'll say three things on this. One, and I'll loop back to this one, but I want to say it first, is the environment in which you're making a change is so huge. Like, you throw two guys who want to make a change and one's in a healthy, supportive environment, like the likelihood of that guy being able to stick to things, have grit, and all these activating factors, very good. So this is why when we drop guys into Fit Father Project, before we had this big community of like-minded guys that are posting, supporting, and like, that's a magic soil. So when you drop into a community that has a lot of that stuff, it makes you a lot more successful. A lot of guys that fail, they fail in isolation. They fail in the dark corners. They fail because they're trying to do it on their own and they don't have some of this, people in their corner. There's a reason why boxers have corner men. They're there, they're helping, even though they're not getting punched in the face like you are. So the second thing I think is really important is getting very clear on doing some of this foundational like mindset and heart set and mission statement work. So before guys start our meal plan, our workouts, the first step of our program is guys build and write a mission statement, which is a series of doing some journaling and reflecting on like, what are the patterns in their life? How is their current decisions with their health, nutrition, exercise affecting the key areas of life and their values that they care about? You're building neuroassociations between what you're doing and these other things. And that creates like an underlying emotional and motivational framework that helps you be a lot more successful. And it's an intentional process. Like, we have guys write down their goals and connect to the mission statement. It's so important. And then the third thing is that really the most successful guys do is they incubate a lot of focused energy in a short period of time. Like in anything, man, you're trying to launch a rocket into space. Like, what Elon Musk is thinking about is, how do I fire enough fuel into this ground to like get enough liftoff trajectory, because gravity is very strong here. So the initial period of starting something is massive. Like, you need to build a lot of focused energy in a 30-day period. So that's why we have like a very focused, intense 30-day program, because we know if we can really incubate all this massive energy early on, like it just shoots you off to a huge trajectory, after the fact. So you really got to incubate. It's like you want to burn something with the sunlight. You need a magnifying glass. You need to stay there for a little bit. So I think that's why programs are effective, right? Because programs and structured stuff give you a container for your energy and your effort, so you can really fire at it. Because like, I joined the Fit Father Project, I'm firing at their Fit Father 30X fat loss program. So like, it gives you that magnifying glass. The guys who don't succeed, they can't focus as much energy, have more vague, they don't have the container of success. So that's one reason why often joining things and paying people for things is like really successful. Like, why does Michael Jordan have like 2 shooting coaches, right? Because like, it's a container for his effort, and they're also seeing things that you're not. So these are some key variables. And notice I didn't say anything about carbs or exercise selection, right? It's like, this is all behavioral and structural stuff that dictates success.
Dude, I love the way you think. I literally could talk to you forever. Like, I absolutely loved today's conversation, man, because we're just so aligned with the way we think, the way we see things. Obviously, we have similar, backgrounds. I'm nowhere near as intelligent or, educated as you are, but I do think we see the world very, very similarly, and we see change in people the same. We see transformation. We see success in health and fitness and life and business, just very, very similar. So I've really enjoyed. I'm very grateful for you coming on here today and just sharing your knowledge and wisdom with the audience. So we obviously, we shared Google Fit Father Project. Where else can people connect with you? Are you hanging out anywhere online, socially? I know you got a podcast, you got a YouTube. Share all the places where people can connect.
Podcast,
get closer to you.
Fit Father Project podcast. We have a lot of member stories. If you want to hear about the process, I think that's a cool place to check out. YouTube channel, if you want to get direct training, lots of videos there. But the best place is fitfatherproject.com.
Okay.
You can check that out. You can contact me and the team on there. And me personally, I'm at a phase where I'm actually doing a lot less social media for myself, because I found that's what rolls best for me right now. So, but you can connect me through Fit Father Project and those properties.
Awesome, brother. Yeah, we'll get all that shared down in the show notes. Your team sent over a special link. I don't know if there's anything special in the page that they sent, or if it's just something for you guys to track. But yeah, we'll get all that stuff shared down in the description, or if you're watching on YouTube, it'll be in the description box. So Dr. Anthony, we have one question we end every single episode with here. Obviously, the title of the show is The Superhuman Life. We've ended up here kind of due to my own, personal transformations, kind of journey that I've been on. But when I talk about living a superhuman life, for me, it's really a belief, or the way that I try to show up in the world every single day. And it's the understanding or the belief that I do believe that we were all put here for a very specific purpose on our life. There's a calling for each one of us, but that's not it. There's a job that we're called to do. There's a part that we play in this, where we're kind of co-piloting this life with whatever you believe spiritually, from that. For me, it's God, it's Jesus. So for me, superhuman life is understanding that you have a purpose and you're walking in it, but you're doing everything you can as far as developing your body, as far as developing your mind, and just working every day to become the person that you were created to be. So that's what I believe living a superhuman life is. But I like to get the guest take here. So Dr. Anthony, as we bring today's conversation to a close here, how would you define living a superhuman life?
Is it a cop-out to say that I still believe the exact same thing you believe? Because, it truly is. That's what I do believe, that, and I could use the language too, we're co-creating this with God, or God's working through us, that we have this unique expression. The word superhuman is interesting to me, because I think that, one, I love it. It sounds sweet. But I think a nuance that I see with it is I believe that what we're doing when we're expressing to the fullest capacity possible, when we're firing on all cylinders, when God's able to work through us in this sense, we're just being human. We're being the greatest expression of human. It's almost like how we have human defined right now is in a very limited perspective. But I think superhuman is our nature. Yes. When we're firing on all cylinders, right? So it's what you're doing is you're raising the bar. This could be the default of our expression. And I think we're moving that way. And who knows what we are even capable of as we continue to learn and purify as a species, right? Superhuman becomes just what human is. And I think it's our very nature. It's just we're throwing off limitations that are making our expression be far less than it could be. I think we might even be at 10% of our power. It's going to turn like a Dragon Ball Z episode. We're still powering up, baby.
Oh, 100%, brother. That was me just taken to the nth degree, brothers. Oh man, that was so well put together, man. Dude, I love you, man.
Likewise, bro. I love you too.
I really do. Thank you. Guys, check out Dr. Anthony. Check out the Fit Father Project. Check out his YouTube channel. He's just doing tremendous. And for the wives and for the women, we didn't even talk about the females. There's a whole Fit Mother Project as well.
Google
so obviously,
Fit Mother Project.
Yeah, I mean, there's majority of the people hearing this are going to be the men, but for the females in your life, make sure you get connected over there at the Fit Mother Project. But I don't even know if we need to end today. We'll just stop recording and you guys figure out where you want to go. But this has been an incredible conversation. Dr. Anthony, thank you so much. For you guys that are out there and you enjoyed this conversation, you can continue to help us grow this mission, continue to help us grow this message out there in the world by supporting the show in one of two ways. First off, if you haven't left a 5-star rating and review and you're listening to these episodes every single week, what's wrong with you? Just hit that button down there, leave a review. If the conversation wasn't valuable, I'm not sure why you're still here, but let us know that as well. We're not scared of a 1-star review. More importantly, though, if there's somebody in your life that needs to hear what Dr. Anthony had to share today, do us a favor and do them the favor by sharing this conversation. But for Dr. Anthony Balduzzi, Frank Rich, go live your life, be a human, but more importantly, become a superhuman. We love you guys, and we'll see you next week.